Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome to Sofa Reviews. Today we're watching The Day After Tomorrow.
Released in 2004, it's a Roland Emmerich disaster movie about global warming.
The film starts with some dozy scientists violating the Antarctic Treaty by planting an American flag.
They work for NORAD and are drilling ice cores.
Frank lets the new guy Jason have a go with the drill, because what's the worst that could happen?
I didn't do anything!
After saving the ice cores, we see the leader of the expedition, Jack, talking at a global warming conference.
And who's going to pay the price of the Kyoto Accord? It would cost the world's economy hundreds of billions of dollars.
A, the economy isn't real, it's a concept, and B, trillions of dollars were given to the banks.
However, Vice President Becker, who is clearly modelled on Dick Cheney, continues his scepticism.
Good to see that allegedly intelligent people who care about money can't see that saving the world might be a good investment.
Outside, Jack meets another scientist, Terry, before we cut to a monitoring station in Scotland.
Kick it! Kick it!
I'm aware footballers are quite stupid, but I think they've managed to grasp that basic concept.
We then cut to Tokyo, where it's raining, before large balls of ice start knocking people down. What? Fuck off!
Indeed. Still, this is enough to kill unnamed Japanese businessman number 3.
Elsewhere, we get introduced to Jack's son, Sam.
Over the next 5 minutes, a woman on a plane almost gets hit by a trolley and literally nothing else of interest happens.
In New York, we see Sam and his friends in some sort of school quiz before we cut to Jack and Terry talking to each other.
Nothing like this has ever happened before.
At least not in the last 10,000 years.
Oh my god, nothing like this has ever happened before, apart from the last time.
After this, we see the first cool image of the movie, as LA is hit by 3 tornadoes.
This gives us the chance to watch the deaths of several people that we have no reason to care about.
Meanwhile in Washington, we see Vice President Becker giving the President the bad news.
The FAA wants your approval to suspend all air traffic.
Suspend air traffic? But what about the economy?
Afterwards, we see NORAD discussing the crisis.
All our grid models are worthless.
I don't think grid models are going to be a lot of help here.
Oh, is that what worthless means?
They eventually consider that all the bizarre weather happening at the same time might actually be connected. Thus, Jack actually gets to offer his theory.
The current depends upon a delicate balance of salt and fresh water.
We all know that.
Yes, we all know that. I'm definitely not a pretend scientist desperately hiding my insecurity and lack of knowledge.
The next day, we see Jack trying to warn the Vice President.
Come on now, Jack, we're the government. We don't need to know why it's happening. We just need to increase taxes.
Back in Scotland, they're snowed in, but Terry doesn't seem too worried.
Luckily we got our own Jenny. Enough tea and biscuits to sink a ship. Oh, we'll be fine. As long as the loo doesn't back up again.
Oh god, the toilet's blocked already. You're all doomed!
Elsewhere, we're shown that it's so cold that helicopters' fuel lines are frozen mid-flight.
Although the fact that it's apparently that cold isn't enough to stop one idiot from opening the door.
In New York, it's raining so much that it's actually starting to flood.
The wolves! They're gone!
Presumably they tied their bedsheets together to make a rope.
Sam and his friends head to the library as the water level continues to rise.
I can't understand what you're saying!
I'd guess a rough translation would be, help, we're trapped in a car, and we're either going to die of hypothermia or drowning. I haven't really considered which is more likely, as I'm understandably in a state of panic.
Laura cuts her leg in the water before going back because she can speak French.
New York is hit by a tsunami, so the most important thing is to focus on 3 blokes in Scotland.
Jack explains they found out how the storms work.
Shouldn't the air warm up before it reaches ground level?
It should, but it doesn't. The air's descending too rapidly.
Because we all know that things get colder the faster they travel. That's why re-entry is so chilly.
It's explained that the enormous hurricanes will engulf and freeze the northern hemisphere before we catch up with Sam.
Listen, thanks for coming back for me. It was really brave.
It's because he wants to put his penis in you. If you were ugly, you'd be dead.
Sam decides to call his dad, and apparently he can only do this from a submerged payphone.
I thought you drowned.
Well, that was the other option.
Jack decides he has to set off to New York to save his son.
Meanwhile, Sam takes advantage of the classic "I nearly drowned in ice cold water" chat-up line.
We see a random ship float into New York before watching Jack give his report to the president.
Stick to science and leave policy to us.
Well, we tried that approach. You didn't want to hear about the science when it could have made a difference.
Yeah, Vice President. Even though the film has already established that it didn't matter that you ignored his advice because it was already too late.
Jack advises that they evacuate everyone south of the border into Mexico, as everyone above the border is doomed.
We can't evacuate half the country because one scientist thinks the climate is shifting.
Because if he's right, you save a load of people, and if he's wrong, they can just go back in a week or so. It's not really a difficult decision.
Off in Scotland, we see the guys are ready to die.
To England.
To mankind.
To Manchester United.
Your death improves the world.
Back in New York, Sam tries and fails to convince everyone to stay inside.
Jack gets ready to head off, but is soon joined by his friends Frank and Jason.
Meanwhile, Sam and friends stock up on supplies and start burning books.
We see Jack and his friends walking along in the snow before Frank falls through a glass roof.
The rope holding the sledge is cut, and Jack tells Jason to support Frank's weight.
Of course, he needs to take off his gloves to hold jagged metal in the ice cold because...
The glass starts to break and Frank decides to sacrifice himself.
Later on in the tent, there's an upsetting moment when they realise that Frank had all of the porn.
Sam and Laura share a tender moment in the library before the Vice President gets some news.
The President's motorcade got caught in the storm. They didn't make it.
The President's motorcade got caught? Oh, if only he had some kind of private jet!
Back in the library and they realise that Laura has septicemia.
Sam decides to break some chairs in order to make snowshoes because everybody was so busy burning books they forgot that wood is flammable.
They decide to go looking on a ship for penicillin to save Laura.
Unfortunately, they're tracked by the CGI wolves, who presumably were unable to build a helicopter with their magic skills.
They find the penicillin before getting attacked by the CGI wolves.
Meanwhile, Jason has passed out and Jack has to drag him to safety from the eye of the storm.
Sam and the others have escaped the wolves and flee to the library as everything starts to freeze.
After outrunning the cold, they keep the fire going as the screen fades to black in a way that can best be described as where the film should have ended.
The film continues with Jason waking up and him and Jack continuing on to New York.
What do you think's gonna happen to us?
What do you mean?
I mean, us. Civilization. Everybody.
Mankind survived the last ice age. We're certainly capable of surviving this one. All depends on whether or not we're able to learn from our mistakes.
Nope.
We then cut to the space station where it seems the storms are clearing.
We're getting scattered reports that the storm is dissipating over North America. Can you confirm?
Affirmative. It's finally clearing.
That's Europe, you bellend.
Eventually, Jack finds his way into the library to rescue Sam and the others.
So the film ends with them in a helicopter as the President gives a speech about learning humility and trying to be less of a cock in the future.
In conclusion, there are at least some positives to take from this film.
It finished?
Well, yes, but it does have good special effects at least, especially considering it's 10 years old almost. There's a lot of cool scenes of destruction, such as the 3 tornadoes hitting LA and seeing half a building still standing. It does at least provide some really cool imagery of the end of the world.
True, but sadly most of the focus is actually on people, rather than having fun with all the destruction. If I'd wanted human interest, I wouldn't be watching a disaster movie. I'd be watching a film with interesting characters that are well written, rather than a collection of vapid, tedious morons whose deaths are worthless and easily forgotten.
Yes, but I think it's an attempt to show how far-reaching the event actually is in question. Showing lots of different people in several situations, scattered all over the world, struggling through this storm. It does at least have Jack the dad, whose storyline involves him never being around for his son when he needs him, and him wanting to go and save him, feeling that guilt. So it kind of leads to a redemption storyline on his part.
Although the script is so poorly written that his two friends demand to come along because he'll need their help, only to literally do nothing other than slow him down, Frank is at least kind enough to speed things up by killing himself. And then, of course, all the science in the film is utter nonsense, which ultimately undermines the entire message that the film is trying to convey.
At the end of the day, it's an entertaining film with lots of cool action scenes, and if it does have to take some liberties with science, at least it may have led to a good cause.
Thank you, Tom. That's good news.
The film ruins the chance to make a really meaningful, impactful message of the dangers and tragedy of such an event by tacking on a rather trite, happy ending. The film would have been a lot better if it had ended when I'd suggested and the credits played out over their frozen corpses.